Alright, in the last lecture we have learned what's a value and we have learned different types of values. Now in this lecture we will learn one of the most powerful features of programming language, which is called variable. A variable is a name that refers to a value. Basically, we are giving a name to a value for future use in our program. So from here you see that we have given a name to a 1, so 1 can be referred in the future by calling its name over here. So the name of 1 in this case is A. Now for example, let's say we have a phone book and we have just written down the numbers of people, and the next time you look at this phone book over here, there is no way to know whose number is these numbers. So in a sense it's the same thing with computers. Even though we have inputted the piece of data, there is no way for us to be able to refer the inputted data unless we give it a name. So in our phone book, we might say that this particular number is belong to Elshad and this particular number belong to Eddie. So in the future, when we are looking at our phone book, we can easily identify whose number is this by looking at their names. So in programming, we are calling these names variables. In our code, we could write something like this. So in this case, you see that the name of variable is Eddie and the value that we are assigning to this variable is this number after the equal sign. So we are writing the variable name equals to the value that we want to assign to this variable. So writing the name equals to the value is called assignment statements, which creates a new variable and give them values. Now here I want to make sure that this equal sign over here is not same as the equal sign that we get used to in math. This is assignment statement, which means that it assigns this value to this variable over here. So for in the future, when we call this variable, it will give us this value over here. So in Python, mathematical equal sign is different than the assignment sign. So in our upcoming lectures, we will talk about this in depth. Now let's see how can we create these variables in practice. Here, I've opened my editor over here from Replit. So I can create, for example, first variable like this. So the name of variable was Eddie. And the number, for example, I can put any number over here. So whenever I refer to Eddie, it's going to give me this value over here. For example, we have learned from previous lectures that we can use print statement. So before we were printing out straight away this value. Now if I print out Eddie, you'll see that it prints out this value over here. Now let's create a few more variables over here. For example, message, I can put something like this. I'm learning Python. Or we can create another variable n, which for example 17, or pi, which is equal to 3.14159, something like this. So these are the examples of assignments or variables. So in the first we are assigning integer to Eddie. In the second variable we are assigning a string type of value to message. Then in the third line we are assigning integer type of value to n, and in the fourth line we are assigning floating number to the pi. Now in the future, whenever we need these values, we don't need to write their values, we can just refer to their names. For example, if you want to calculate some equations using pi, you are just assigning it to over here and using it many times in your program. So I can print out, for example, pi, you'll see that it's printing out the pi's value over here. So it's printing out the pi's value. So as I mentioned, this means that in the future, if we need this piece of data, we just refer their names over here. And these names are called variables. Now from here, as the name variable suggests, it is something that can be changed or varied. So for example, let me just put something like this here. For example, I'm creating the variable of name. For example, I will assign it Elshad, and I'll just print out this. So if I run our code, you see that it prints to the console Elshad because I'm referring the data by its name, variable name. Now, for example, later on, I decided to give this variable a different piece of data to hold. Let's say, for example, I will put name equals to Eddie. And then after assigning it, I want to print out one more time name. So what do you think these lines will print? Now, if we run this code, we see that both names get printed to the console. So at this point, when we call print first, the name was holding the value of Elshad. But in the line of 3, we have assigned new value to the name. And when we are printing out this, it was holding the value of Eddie. So that's why in the first print statement, it prints out Elshad. And in the second print statement, it prints out Eddie because before printing out this variable, I have assigned new value to it. So after this assignment, whenever you refer to name, it's going to print out Eddie. So for example, if I put one more time print over here, you'll see that it prints out Eddie twice. So this means that the variable keeps the last value that we assigned to it. And this way of writing the code makes our code a lot easier, and you will see it in our upcoming lectures. So all in all, we can say that variables are used to store information to be referenced and manipulated in the computer program. They also provide a way of labeling data with a descriptive name. So by giving the descriptive name, we can identify the variables easily. So it's helpful to think of variables as containers that hold information. Their sole purpose is to label, store data in the memory. This data then can be used throughout our program. Now, when it comes to the naming of the variable, we have to be very careful to prevent syntax errors. So programmers generally use the names for their variables that are meaningful, and they are documenting that variable, mentioning that what variable is used for. The name of variables can contain letters and numbers, but we cannot start the name of a variable with the number. For example, if I create a new variable from here with the starting with number, and for example I put first name like this and assign it to Ershad and try to run our code, you see that it gives us syntax error. So this means that we cannot start the variable's name with the number. So it's legal to use the uppercase letters, but it's a good idea to begin the variable's name with the lowercase. And we can use underscore in our variables. For example, you can write something like this: my underscore name is Ershad. So we are just printing out my name. You will see that everything works smoothly. So if I run our code, you see that everything works alright. So whenever you want to declare a variable in which you have multiple words, so you can use underscore between them. But some programmers prefer to use camel case style in their code. I also personally prefer that style because it's more readable for me. In camel case style, we are just starting the name with lowercase. Then when you have the second word, you are putting it like this with the capital letter. So my name is become like this. So it looks like some kind of camel. So that's why they put the name of camel case. So then whenever you print out this name, it will work right. So you see that everything works fine. For example, if you have another variable like this, for example, my second name, so it's going to be like this. So you can declare your variable in camel case style like this. So here you need to keep in mind that if you give a variable an illegal name, you will get syntax error. So one of the illegal names is you cannot start variable name with number. Another, you cannot use characters like, for example, @ character. For example, name, I put name @ over here. You'll see that it gives us syntax error because you see that we cannot use @ sign over here. Or if you use the keywords that we explained in our previous lecture as a variable name, then it gives you a syntax error as well. So these are the 35 keywords that we have for Python. So it's highly recommended not to use these keywords as a variable name. For example, if I put over here one of these, for example, class, like this, and run our code, you'll see that it gives us syntax error because the class is the reserved word for Python. So we cannot use the reserved words as variable name. For example, there might be situations you are getting error and you are checking everything and you see that everything seems alright, but you don't know the reason of the error. So if the syntax error is something like this, so I advise you to check that if the name that you have created is in the reserved list of the Python. Because when you are starting programming, initially many people use reserved words as variable names, so that's why they get confused about it and get many syntax error. But after some time, they get used to it and they are avoiding using reserved words as a variable name. So this is all for this lecture. So in this lecture, I have explained you everything about variables. So hopefully everything is clear about variables. So see you in the next lecture.